For Fox Sports, I'm Annabelle Stefan, reporting just outside of the Westin Hotel in Birmingham, Alabama, the site of this year's SEC Basketball Media Days. The first coach to take to the podium this morning was Florida head coach Billy Donovan, who addressed the issues surrounding the Elite Eight, changes in the offseason, replacing some of his key players, and much more.
Again, I wasn't even aware of that, which you just mentioned, so certainly humbled, anytime your name gets mentioned with Adolph Rupp just being at Kentucky for 5 years like I was, and understanding what he did to for that program and with the program is, really remarkable.
You've been around this league almost to anybody. How does it get back to where you were when you got here? I don't go through cycles, but it's kind of been tough to get back to where it was.
You know what, I think it's really changed a lot, and I think we've talked about this a lot. And the most interesting thing to me was when I first got into the league, one of the things that happened with the NCAA tournament was everybody kind of scheduled, and I don't want to say soft, but everybody kind of scheduled in a way that your team could maybe play through mistakes, still be in a position to win, and then you realize that your team was going to be evaluated by what you did inside the league. And once we got to the league, it used to be, and I think in any power conference, not just the SEC, but any power conference, if you had a 500 or above record, that was an automatic guarantee to the NCAA tournament. That automatically happened. And I think times have really changed, where there is much more of a focus on what's going on in the non-conference, who you're playing in the non-conference, who you're playing on the road. And now they're really looking in a lot of ways just a whole body of work. So there was a time where if you were in the ACC, Big East, Pac-10, Big 12, SEC, those teams that had a 500 automatically in. Everybody just kind of relied on their leagues, and now you're unable to do a lot of that. So I think when you talk about getting back to that point, our league, I think a lot of times, and people are evaluating leagues now by what you do in the non-conference schedule. I think that will be important for our league of how we do as a group outside of our conference games.
Billy, you let your team come up with a name this year. They came up with swag. That's what Patrick told us. What got into that?
Those guys came up with it themselves. It was kind of what they wanted to do. I think one of the things, and I've always believed in as a coach, is that you've got to be able to handle adversity together. So they kind of came up with this thing, strengthen, when adversity grows, is kind of where it means. So it was really on them. They did it. It was up to them. I do think that for our team this year, one of the things I'm looking at is how well we can be connected. I think our guys have great relationships. They get along, but there's a different bond and a different connectedness that you're talking about, to continually, be a team that's an elite team. And I think that's what they've tried to work on.
Yeah, Patrick was saying he's lost some weight, feels pretty good. How's he looking at it lighter weight?
He's done good. Patrick's grown. One of the things I thought last year is I thought he got too big and too strong. I think he's a better player when he's down. He's probably dropped 10 pounds. I think he's moving better. I think he's got more flexibility. He doesn't look as tight and as rigid as maybe he did a year ago. I think being a senior and going through the experiences he's gone through, he's really improved. So he's done a good job here up to this point in time.
How much adversity, Billy, have you guys had to deal with?
Yeah, well, I guess we're playing with 7 guys right now, so we got a lot of injuries right now.
How long-term is this?
Yeah, you know what? I don't know. That's the thing that's really going to be very interesting. I think that we have a chance to be a team that, maybe a team December, January that is in a position to reach its fullest potential. We're not there right now. We've got 4 guys that aren't even practicing. Michael Frazier's out, DeMontre Harris is out, Eli Carter's out, Will Yaget's out. We've got 11 scholarship players. That takes those 4 guys out, takes us down to 7 right now. And we've been using a walk-on. Most of our practices have been 4-on-4. I think it's been very challenging for those guys physically without any subs. And like I told them, time keeps moving. There's going to be, every day that goes by, we're moving closer and closer to playing games. So regardless if we've got 7 guys or 5 guys or 6 or 11, we can't call up and say, well, listen, we don't have our full team and we're not going to be able to play today, and can we reschedule the game? So we've got to practice and try to maximize, whatever it is that we have right now. But I don't think we've faced any adversity, up to this point in time, at all. I think the adversity comes, when practice gets really difficult, games get really difficult, handling winning, handling losing, those kind of things I think is where you ultimately have got to, handle the distraction, so to speak, or the things that create a level of adversity for you. Well, the only thing that we're worried about, and why they're doing it takes 5 days to figure it out, is does he have mono? That's the biggest fear. And if he does, that's a 3 week to a month, him being out of competition, out of playing, out of everything. So I don't know that to be the case. Apparently, you can have a false positive, with this mono. So I think there's some time since doing blood work that they want to let go by to rule out whether or not it's mono, but we don't know yet. So hopefully when I get back today, I'll find out a little bit more. But as of right now, he's just got a virus that has prevented him from practicing. And until we find out exactly what it is, he'll be out of practice.
What does that do to you as a coach when you can't have a full team out there? I mean, you have to adjust practices.
Yeah, I think you're limited to what you can do, but you're unlimited in your limits, so to speak. So if we got 7 or 8 guys, we need to continue. We may not be able to go 2.5 hours like probably most teams are going. Patrick Young is on the court, without a sub the whole entire time. So sometimes we're doing transition, then the half court, then back to transition, then back to half court. But we still need to get better. We need to grow. The toughest part for me as a coach is going to be on the offensive end of the floor. Because when you start getting players back and you start trying to inject them into roles offensively, it becomes a little bit more challenging. And that's been the hard part for us, is we have not had a full team play together. Can we get better, legitimately in December or January, when we became maybe a little bit more healthier, when we haven't practiced with each other? So that's a concern for me right now, as a coach.
Jones is trying to build a program that has a lot of football success. You did the same thing. What's the secret to doing that?
I would say, the first thing is, to me, is getting the right kind of guys. I don't think it's all about talent all the time. I think getting the right kind of guys that understand what you are about as a coach, is really, what's really, really important. We've been fortunate. We've won a couple league championships over the last 3 or 4 years. We've been to the Elite 8 3 years in a row. We've had 1 first-round draft pick, and we've had 1 second-round draft pick, and sometimes a lot of it's got to do with your team. Certainly you got to be talented, they got to be good enough, but you can have talented guys that are not really bought in. You got to, I think, get a team that understands what it is to be a team. And I had that, in my 3rd year when Miller came here, and I had Haslam and I had Dupay. Those were a special group of guys, and they were good players too. They were talented players.
How do you convince guys? Come to a school that before had some basketball success, but it's all about football. You embrace a football program.
Yeah, and I also think too, when I first got to Florida, 17 years ago, 18 years ago, the recruiting was different. I was really able to go out and develop relationships. I think the rules have changed so much that it's really become very, very difficult. I think the age now of Twitter and Facebook, so much of it is not those personal relationships. Back then when you go on the road, you were always meeting with people, you were talking with people. People felt like, okay, I trust this guy. I'm going to send a player here. I want my son to go there. The recruiting is totally different. The landscape is totally different than it was 20 years ago. And, I was probably, back then, being 30 years old, had a lot of energy and enthusiasm to be able to go around and build those kind of relationships with different people that I identified that I thought could really help change the perception of our program. And I really went after Mike Miller hard, just because I felt like he could do that. Haslam the same thing, and Dupay, and then, Brett Nelson, Bonner, Donald Harvey. There were certain guys I identified that we really, really worked hard. But I'm not so sure in today's way it is right now you can do that. You can't do that anymore. Those days are long gone. So it becomes a little bit more difficult and challenging to do, what you're talking about doing.
How good is Chris Walker really?
The thing about Jerry right now, I can't talk about him. So that's hard. Yeah, so I apologize. But if we get to signing date again, I'd be happy to talk to you about it.
Billy, can you talk about the development of the Arkansas and LSU basketball programs? What have you seen from them under the years with relatively young coaches?
Well, I think the one thing that's really unique about that is that, Johnny was at LSU when Dale Brown was there, where there was an enormous amount of success. and I think Johnny has seen LSU basketball at the pinnacle and at the highest level, and so to speak. I think the same thing can be said for Mike at Arkansas. Mike was with Nolan when they won national championships and got to the Final Four. He's seen Arkansas basketball at the peak and at the height. So you've got two guys that understand and were there at the respected schools when it was extremely successful. So I think those guys have got their programs moving in the right direction. I think, for Mike, what was probably difficult is, you end up losing, two players to the draft, and one or both, I don't even know if they got drafted. Those guys coming back probably really changed your team. But I think both Mike and Johnny have done a terrific job.
When you coached Julius Randle, what impression did you make?
Oh, I love him. He, first he's got a really, really high basketball IQ. I think he's a pass-first guy. He's very, very unselfish. I think maybe the best skill that he's got is passing the basketball. He's got great vision. And then I think the other thing for him is his size, being 240 pounds, the way he's as quick of a 6'9", 240 guy as I've ever seen with the ball in his hands. He's got great handling and passing skills. I think his jump shot has gotten better. I think his low post game has gotten better. But he's an incredible player on his feet. And as a kid, top notch. One of the nicest kids I've ever been around.
Preseason poll had obviously Kentucky favored you guys for second. Tennessee got some first place. How good is it for the league for there to be that kind of, perception from the media that there are more teams that want?
I said this last year. I felt like last year here that Tennessee was the best team in the league, and obviously it didn't pan out that way. And I think some of it had to do with losing Maben, Golden being hurt. They had to battle through some injuries and played this year without some key guys and some key moments. But I think with all those guys coming back, if their team is healthy, they're as good as anybody in this league. And they're a very veteran, laden, senior-laden team that's got a lot of experience. And, losing Maimon to me, he's a different kind of player. And him healthy, adds a totally different element to their team. So I still hold to what I said last year about them. I think they're going to be, as good as anybody in this league.
Do you view your team being second, coming off an SEC title behind a team that's obviously talented, 70,000 Americans with a lot of unknowns?
Well, you know what? We have a lot of unknowns. We have a lot of unknowns. Michael Frazier's going to have to move into a different role. I mean, really outside of Patrick Young and, and Scotty Wilbekin until he gets back to our team, everybody's really in a different role right now. You got Casey Hill's a freshman point guard right now. Dorian Finney-Smith's coming in, highly recruited out of high school, but he's never played a game here. DeMontre Harris. So, I think we have a lot of unknowns. We have some pieces, but right now with our injuries and not having a full complement of players, as the season starts, how all this stuff kind of gels and meshes is going to be very interesting for our team. But if I would tell you right now today, if we had a healthy Eli Carter, if we ended up having, Will You Get healthy, and we got Frazier's there and DeMontre Harris and Scotty Wilbekin and Walker's here, and we're all starting on this October 11th with that group fully healthy, then we have a chance to be really, really good. But our team doesn't look like that anymore. That's not what our team is now. I'm hopeful that maybe as we move through the year we can get to that place, but we're not there right now.
What's the timetable process on getting Scotty back, for games?
For me right now, it's just basically he's got things in front of him that he's got to do. He's got to do things, and to his credit, he's done a great job up to this point in time. But it's really going to be more dictated on how he handles himself going forward. So, when that is, I don't know. He's in practice. He is practicing. But I'm definitely going to hold him out of some games. He knew that from the front end. The number of games he gets held out is probably going to have to do with, how well he handles, what he does. If he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing, there'll probably be more games tacked onto it.
Make sure to keep it right here at Fox Sports as we continue to bring you the latest on SEC basketball. Reporting from Birmingham, I'm Annabelle Stefan.